Do you
All
hear
right,
that deep? Sorry.
no, I can. It's not a big deal. Whatever. Who cares?
Okay.
I'm very excited for this episode. I've been a big fan of this guy for a long time. Ross, thank you for coming onto the show.
Yes, no doubt, Will. I'm
So
excited.
I wrote out a bunch of questions, but you off air said that you want to go off the fly, and so I have no questions in front of me, but I have a bunch of questions, so I can't wait to dive in.
Awesome.
Um, I'm a big fan of your work, but before we go into all the questions, just give us 2-minute rundown on who is Ross.
Yeah. So I started playing basketball as a player, ninth grade, got cut in eighth grade. Fell in love with training, like right off the bat. It became the thing. I didn't even think about how this is going to translate into games. And I really took that into the extreme throughout my entire career. Made my freshman team my ninth grade year, and then I made varsity my 10th grade year. And I was doing things already in training my sophomore year that I wasn't able to do until senior year of high school. This was in Long Island, New York. And yeah, I had a really good high school career. My senior year was one of the best players on Long Island. Played Division II basketball under Tobin Anderson at Stack. He's now the head coach of Iona. He just beat Purdue in the last March Madness run as the 16 seed with FDU, and that was a crazy experience. Learned a ton. Then after Stack, I went to physical therapy school, got my doctorate at New York Medical College in Westchester, and that was 3 years, right? So I had a lot of different experiences, right? I was playing, I was under a great coach. Then I was in physical therapy school, really just dove into my curiosities. Like I was not the best student. I had a lot of like professionalism, meaning like I was always doing my own thing, my own curiosities. I was always curious. And so that was a really good experience. Built a huge base of knowledge. Dove into my own things. I always tested things on patients that I was working with, and that entire time throughout that, starting my junior year in college, I started coaching. So I started coaching a ninth grade boys team my junior year, and then I coached every single year since then. So I've coached 5 years. This is the first year I haven't coached. And then last year I coached a girls team, which, as I was telling you before, it was my favorite experience. I loved it, in the future, that's definitely something that I want to be a pillar of my time is coaching girls. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And now I've been training with Bobby White in New Jersey for about a year now, which has already been a year, which is crazy. And yeah, so we're doing things on the court and in the weight room, and it's a really very different environment. There's not a lot like it that I've seen as far as combining the two worlds because of just the level of execution that it takes to do so.
What about the training drew you in to dive into it? A lot of the players just do the training because they have to do the training. But what was it about the training for you that was really compelling and you wanted to learn more about it?
As far like as a trainer and coach.
You know what? Maybe let's talk about you as a player. Was there something? Did you train a little bit more than everybody else, or were you kind of just training and waiting for the game to come along?
Yeah, and this, of course, this wasn't conscious at the time at all. This became conscious probably a few years ago in PT school, but I literally never thought about what is the outcome of this training going to be. And this is not something that I'm saying as I recommend this at all, but this is just my truth. I literally went into training and went to go train because I trained. As an example, my junior year, I in the playoff game, and pretty much the reason why we lost. I airballed a three, got back. Like, this is just one play. Airballed a three, got back, and one foul. And my coach screamed at me at the end of the game. I had 0 points. He said, "This is the reason why that the seniors are going home. This is why they're not playing basketball anymore, because of you." And he like ripped me apart, which is ridiculous. But
Yeah.
because I worked so hard, like I gave everything to the team. But whatever. The next day, I'm training, and when I look back at it, it wasn't because of like, oh, I have to go get everybody back, or I was like motivated. I literally just trained. Like, that's what I did, and I loved the like the disconnect that happened with me when I just went completely like as hard as I possibly could in training, and I was doing all the right things. That was the reason why I trained always. So I didn't really think about, oh, is this right? Is this wrong? It's like there was always an intuitive feeling of like, this is right if I deserve it. And I kind of carried that through everything. It's like you got to deserve it regardless of if it's like good training, bad training. Like the most important thing is like there's merit to what you do and how you execute and how you approach things. And that's what I learned at a young age. So that's what really inspired me to train hard.
And I'm sure there's a huge difference with the question I'm about to ask you next. But how did your training differ from when you were a kid to where it is now? And the reason I'm asking you this is because I'm a coach as well, and someone by the name of John Kessel, I don't know if you ever heard of him, from USA Volleyball, said something along the lines of we are trying to be the person that we never had when we were younger. So that has always stuck with me. So what I'm trying to say is, how has your training evolved from when you were a player and then when you first started in coaching to where it is now?
Yeah. So as a player, it was like kind of very traditional, like stationary ball handling vibes, like block practice, not a lot of live play, not a lot of creativity involved. It was like there's a job to be done, you do it the right way. If not, you're running. Like that was the culture, getting up a lot of reps. That was the vibe around training on the court. And right when I started training other players myself, which began when I started coaching, which was junior year of college, my training mimicked that, because I didn't know anything else. It mirrored
Yep.
that, right? So
Yep.
I mirrored that, and I mirrored that for about probably a couple years, a few years, and then I started to question things. And I think in the moment that I started to question things, like the quality of my training went down because I was like testing things. I was like, you know what, that doesn't really make sense. Just because they did it doesn't mean I have to do it. And there was like, I think there was like a drop off because I was overthinking.
Give me an example, Ross. What was something that you were like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Let me try it this way. Like, give me an
Yeah.
example of what that was
Yeah,
like.
so, one of the things would be, like, getting up a lot of reps, right? Getting
Mhm.
up a lot of shot reps. It's like, alright, there's a point of, like, I think if you're really good at basketball and you're somebody that's, like, that can shoot the ball and you're still not making shots in games, you're somebody that's saying, "Oh, I'm getting up a ton of reps. Oh, I'm putting in all the work, but I can't make shots in games." It's like, is it more work like that, or is that work that you're doing just to like shield yourself as like an excuse for why you're not making shots in games? I see that a lot, and I was that person. I was like, I wanted to just go hard, and then it was like almost a shield for me to say, "Oh, but I'm doing all the work," and it was easy for me to do all that hard work. But was it the hard work that I needed, or was it like a creative component? Was like a flow component, a letting go component that I was missing? So I think that's one of the examples of like I was trying to pick at that, and I think I wasn't doing it as well as I could, and then it started to take off, especially with Bobby, especially with the amount of time that I'm actually training now for the last year, just the amount of volume that I'm getting. It's now it's completely different where it's like I see the benefits of what I was doing as a young coach, as a young trainer. Yeah, I'm still young, but like as like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I saw the benefits of what I was doing. It was very discipline oriented. It was a very the same vibe that I had. Now I'm combining those two. I'm combining that. There's a time and place for that energy, and then there's also a time and place for that flow, creativity, energy that I'm trying to implement now.
I think that's a good point because you said up to a certain point, right? Volume just becomes volume, and you don't really need any more volume. Volume is not going to solve the problem, and that's an interesting thing because it's something that I even till this day, and I've been doing this since I was 18. That goes through my head is like for the veteran player, that volume, I call it comfort and confidence, where you kind of just get into the zone, may last for 2 to 3 minutes, and they're ready to go, right? But the
Yeah.
person who's just learning, I mean, that might be a large portion of what they do. Say I'm coming to you for the first time. How are you kind of gauging how much of what I need?
Yeah, I think that's a very difficult question. I think, and I'll zoom out on this. It's like players find what they're looking for. So if a player is coming to me and they're only coming to me for 2 to 3 hours a week, am I going to be the sole reason of them getting better? No, I'm gonna help. But it's like players find what they're looking for. You have a player that comes to you and they the look in their eye, they say the reason why they want to be good is they want to put food on the table for their family. That's going to be completely different than a player coming in and just looks around, shrugs, not sure of who they are, what they're trying to do, why they play bet. Like they have nothing. Like they have there's nothing about like. there's only so much that I could do. You take that other player though, like they're going to find the answers of like what they need. If they think that they need volume, they'll go need volume. And then I become more of like a guide of like what are the things that they're avoiding? What are the things that they're doing from a unconscious level and become conscious of those things. I think that's my main role. So new players coming to me, I'm looking at everything. I'm just letting them play. I'm not really putting pressure on myself to evaluate. I don't think that's the right move from a physical standpoint, maybe, but from a skillful standpoint, I want to just step back and look, step back and see what are they doing? How do they approach the game? How do they walk in the gym? What is just a general vibe? And then slowly start to get more and more specific as time goes on. But when they first come in, I'm just like, all right, here, you're in the fire, go. Like watch what everybody else does. Like if it's a group, and just delay what you do, watch what they do. If I say skips, you'll know what that means, and then you just follow them. And I want to just see how they respond in the moment. And I'm just like, I don't really pay much attention to them. Go. Like I'm not going to be your friend. I'm not going to be anything. You're just coming in for the first time. And I'll look. I won't show them that I'm paying attention to them, but I'm looking, I'm seeing, I'm evaluating. I'm like, what are they good at? What are they drawing to? What do they avoid? Those types of things. And then over time I build something in my brain that's like a little bit of a map of like who they are, what they do, why they're here.
You have some of the most creative stuff. And I'm going to talk about good drills and what that means in a second. But how much experimental time do you allocate? I mean, I'm not saying that you allocate a certain amount of time for experimenting, but how much time on a weekly basis do you just step on the court and you know what? I've been thinking about this, so I'm going to play with this and we're going to try it. How much time do you spend every day, every week on coming up with new stuff?
Like off the court and on the court, like with implementation
No, no, I'm saying on the court. Let's say on the
on the
court because
court.
I know off the court that's your brain is constantly thinking.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I
on
get
the
that.
court, I would say it's about it depends on the session, right? It depends on how they're responding. I pretty much try something new every single group, like which
Right.
is insane. I think I do have a knack of like of creating in the moment. I try something new every single group. Most of the times it works out. Sometimes though it doesn't, and you have to pivot and move and say,
Yeah.
okay, like I suck, like free throw each, and then we're on to the next thing. But I probably try something new, a little wrinkle for something, pretty much every single group, and I see how they respond. Like I always give myself that time, and it's also good for them because then they're always getting something new, and then when they come in, they don't know what to expect, and it could be completely different, like a setup that we've never done before, and it's like you're on the fly, you have to think, you have to know what's going on, and if it doesn't work, I put no pressure on myself. I'm willing to take that L on the court, which is fine. So it's often. Can I give an example? Yeah, I can. Yesterday, we were in our Discord and everybody was asking about a floater. Like how can I train my floater? How can I we had a coach on. How can I incorporate floaters into our group session? And I said like it's not very complicated. Like I'll show you. And I've never like thought about it whatever. So I said I'm going to do it today for you. And this was like a couple hours before training. And I set up a drill. At first, it wasn't working well. The cones, like whatever it was a closeout floater drill. And then I slowly built in the constraints as they were going, as the flow of the drill was happening to make it match up. So I'll give myself that time. I would say it's like one time, one drill at least every single workout that I'm running. There's something creative happening. This changes though. That's for training. If I'm coaching, I don't really go creative mode. I go like this is what we want to this is where we want to go and this is how we're going to get there and it's like this is what we're doing, like so it's a little bit different of a vibe. If I'm training though, yeah, I definitely give myself that time often.
You you've coined the phrase good drill. What does that mean? Is there a checklist that we have to go through in order for something to be a good drill? I would imagine that actually means transferable, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Honestly, good drill is almost like it's almost a troll on everybody that says elite drill. Everybody that says like, "Oh, this is an elite drill for this." It's like it's not about the drill almost, right? What good drill stands for, it's like it's just good. Like it's nothing about the drill. It's about who's the person that's executing the drill. I This
Mm,
is another example of this. I had a player that plays at Brown and then a player that plays at SMU in a level 2 group. So this is like 8th, ninth graders that aren't that good yet. They come into a group. I do one of my creative spiels and it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. They make it work. They made the drill work because of their energy, because of their focus. They like me and Bobby have this joke like bad drills can be good drills because if it's a bad drill with a bad setup, it has bad flow. If you have good players in that drill that are focused, it almost challenges another portion of them, right? Are they focused? Are they determined? Are they like, all right, how can we make this work even though the flow of the drill is bad, even like whatever. So it's like it's the players in the drill, it's the intent, it's like the context of who's doing it. If you have players that are like can't do anything, can't focus, can't put anything together, then every drill can be bad. If you have super elite players that are like extremely confident, extremely locked in, they know what's going on, they know the environment, whatever, then they can make a bad drill good. So it's
Mm,
less about the drill, it's about intent. Another thing about that is like you can squat one way, right? You can squat like say 80% of your 1 rep max for 5 reps. You could do that for 5 reps one way, and then you could do it for 5 reps with the intent to go fast. And I think that's
mm,
just one example. Like intent really matters. Intent makes a huge difference. You could go jump every single day and try to improve your bounce. If you're not jumping with a certain level of like obsession and like you need to get bounce, you need to get to the rim, you have this intent, you have this desire to get to the rim, that's going to get you bound. But if you just go jump and you're just like, oh, I'm
yep.
just going to go jump, go through the motions, it's like that's kind of what good drill stands for. It's the people in the drill. And like there's so many things that work, and it's like as long as you're pushing the boundaries of your focus, your competitiveness, your creativity, you're becoming more self-aware within the drill, your intent is genuine. Those are the things that make a good drill good. We don't talk about it enough because on social media it's, oh, just good drill, good drill, and it's very catchy, it's very good, but it really started as a like almost a troll of the elite drill, and not a lot of people understand that and see that. And I guess there's a few other components to it, but that's how it started. And and then it just becomes a fun word that we say because it's almost like a description word and a noun. It's like, oh, that's a good drill. Good drill.
Speaking of that, this is interesting. What what are some of the things where do you think the training industry is going as a whole? Here I am in Hong Kong. I may come every maybe 2 to 3 times a year to the States, but you're over there like long term. Where is the let's talk about basketball first. Where is the basketball training industry going? Does Ross feel like it's going down the like a positive path? Do you feel like there's a lot of work to be done? What do you where are you seeing the path right now?
I think from what I see, it's generally positive. It's not like most of the time when I see people train, when I see like I wouldn't train the way most people train.
Mhm.
I think most people just don't have an understanding of how you develop skill. Most people
Mm,
don't have an understanding of what actually matters when it comes to developing a player and developing a human. I think there's a lot of ego involved with coaching. When I coach and train, I don't talk a lot because I don't think I serve unless I think it's going to serve a specific value. I'm very conscious of what words come out of my mouth. And but for the most part, I think like just being on the court, and as long as there's a competitive nature and as long as
mm,
there's a standard that you're being held to, like that's number one. That is the baseline at all times. And it's hard to judge somebody negatively if that's happening. And I don't see that not happening a ton. Like if somebody's going to somebody else for training, and I see this on social media, I see this gyms I walk into, like there's usually like some type of standard. There's usually some type of level of like discipline that's exuded upon players from the trainer. And as long as that's happening, it's good. From a skill acquisition standpoint, I think it could be a whole lot better. I think that people don't like the majority of people don't understand what the whole field of motor learning is. It's something that I was exposed to extremely early on, like 5, 6 years ago, and I got way more of it in physical therapy school. And I just the second I heard about it, I was just typing in basketball motor learning, and I was just like I was wanted more and more and more, and I got down some deep like literature rabbit holes with it. And yeah, I think a lot of people just aren't exposed to it enough, and they just do what they were taught, which is perfectly fine. But I don't think people lean into some of those principles enough.
let's so imagine because this is what I want to go into. So imagine you're talking to a Ross 5 to 6 years ago. Ross is listening to this podcast. Talk about skill acquisition. What is missing from a lot of the training that may be taking place and what you're seeing, at least stateside?
Yeah, I think what's missing is a very obvious thing. It doesn't have to even be something you study. It's just very obvious. There's a lack of challenge in moments, right? There's a lack of challenge. So people will take a finishing drill and they'll make it challenging by making it challenging to how tired you are from the drill. That happens a lot. They won't make it challenging from a skill standpoint, meaning a standpoint of how much can you control your body and the ball in the air before you finish? How fast can you manipulate the ball based on what you're perceiving around you, right? How much can you transfer real skills to real games and not just challenge your conditioning? I don't think challenging conditioning is bad, but there becomes a point where I think that, like, for myself, I'll do 100 mic drills, like I'll do whatever it takes. And I was like, you know what, screw it. If I do 100 mic every single day, I'll be good at finishing. But then when I got to a game, there's a freeze, because that's not what actually matters. And I think what I wasn't doing was I was using my hard work as a shield, and I wasn't conscious of the ways that I was avoiding my creativity, avoiding that flow, because I wanted to just control what I could control. And I think a lot of players and a lot of people do that, is like there's merit in hard work. 100%, you need it. But then, like, you need a softer side. You need to, like, tap into, that's another human quality that I think is just avoided based in fear. And yeah, I think ball handling, finishing, shooting, there has to be a challenge of the actual skill in the moment, not just challenging your conditioning as you're doing the skill.
So do you mean context? Would that be the word that you mean? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think like context, but yes, context, like, of the, like putting the environment. Yes,
Yeah,
context.
the environment. So the
Yeah,
context of the environment,
yes,
meaning it could be the task, it could be how fatigued you are, it could be who's guarding you, it could be how slippery the floor is, it could be a myriad of
yes.
different things. Yeah.
I,
So yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think a great place to start is like what are the demands that the player is trying to achieve, right? They want finishing for what? What situation do they want to be in that they want to finish better at? And, like, you can simplify things so much, especially with that small sided games like mindset. Like, you don't have to know a lot about motor learning if you literally just have common sense. It's like, all right, you want to be better in this situation in this game, go do the thing. Right? There's nothing that involves not doing the thing if you want to get better at it. So, for example, if you want to get better in a half court setting of, like, catching and ripping, and you have an advantage and you want to get to the rim and finish at the rim, if you have three people, one person with the ball starts on the wing, another person starts on their hip, that's your advantage, either hip, whatever you want. That This is just a very simple way of doing it. And then the third person starts under the rim, and they're the third defender. And it's on the offense's go. They have the initiation, and then you just practice finishing literally in the situation in which you want to get better. If you start there, and then you could break it down further and say, like, all right, what are the demands of this? So now I'm doing the thing. That's step one. What are the demands of this? Okay, I need to be able to get to space quickly. I need to be able to jump and control my body in the air. I need to be able to change the position of the ball quickly, right? I have to have good manipulation of the ball. My rate of focus, which is something people don't talk about, has to be fast. I need to be able to find space on the floor and then quickly adjust to where am I, like, against the rim. There's a lot of players that are looking down at the floor and then they try to go up and look at the rim at the same time. The rate of focus has to be faster. And training all those qualities outside of doing the thing, I think, improves you, building that skill capacity, not a conditioning capacity, not like truly building a skill capacity and making training look a little bit ugly, I think is a good thing to get the transfer.
Correct. And I think that if you look at from a, well, you talk about motor learning skill acquisition standpoint, that that thing, whatever that means, that thing that we're working on may not be the best possible solution in many different situations.
Yes.
So rather than starting with the what, why don't we start with the why and the how and then figure out the what? You know, and I think that's something that I admire a lot about what you do. And it also takes me to the next point, which, because you take the physical as well as the technical side and put it together, which is, I don't see how you couldn't. I mean, this is definitely, I mean, that's what I do as well. But in-game dunking versus layup line dunking, I think you guys talk about that a lot, and I think you guys might be the best in terms of talking about that. You talk about intent, you talk about context, right? dunking when there's absolutely no defender and there's going to be no threat of anybody ever coming out to guard you or to create contact in a layup line versus if someone is just simply running behind you and there may not be any chance that they catch you. Two very different dunks. What do you think?
Up 100%, 1000%. I think fear is the number one thing that we're trying to get rid of, right? We're trying to flow and not lose energy with that, with anything that we're doing, right? The second you input fear of like, oh, I don't know how this person's about to bump into me. I don't know, like, how am I going to land? There's thoughts that happen, right? When you're wide open, yeah, sure. Go ahead. Go take your wide open dunk. There's somebody with you. Are you willing to put your body on the line? Are you willing to like go do something crazy and be fearless with your body, with how you're dunking the ball? That is a huge component. And good players don't question themselves. They just go do. And there's a level of aggression that they can spike on in a moment of time that players that don't have that can't. Like if you're really good at dunking, like without anybody there, and then there's somebody behind you and you can't dunk, it's probably because you can't turn on that switch of like, I'm gonna be just super aggressive right now and just go dunk the freaking ball. And the good players have that. They probably have a hint of fear if you can't, like, there's something that's holding you back. There's something that's stopping you. You can't turn it on, right? So it's like you can go the fear route or you can go positivity, which is like creativity, competitiveness, like that route. If you take that route on a genuine level and you do that, that happens, right? And I talk about it a lot. This is when I speak in training. I said that I don't talk a lot. When I talk in training, it's mainly about these things. I'm not talking about very specific things for the most part. Sometimes I do, but for the most part, it's like what are you avoiding because of fear? And as long as I can make you conscious of that, and your true intent is to do what's coming out of your mouth, and I tell you what you're afraid of, and I make you conscious, and now just go attack that thing. Stop being afraid. Like go attack it. I know it's scary. Go do it anyway, and then you do that, you get better in the moment automatically. I think that's a huge part of what I do. That's a good example of it.
So it can be developed, is what you're saying.
Yes, some people have it
But
naturally,
yeah, that
but I think it 100%, it can be brought out of people. I think it's there. I think it's there. I think fear just gets in the way. And like, I'll give you a drill that I do. One drill that I do that I think is very underrated that I haven't shown ever, and it's very simple, is like you have to go dunk the ball and scream so that if somebody's outside, they could hear you. And what does this do? What this does is it connects the action with the emotion. And you can't scream so somebody outside in our gym, if somebody's outside, the only way that they could hear you is if like you're not holding back. Like it has to be boom, and then you like there has to be a connection of like what you're doing, what your energy is. You're not letting back. You're just like there's a connection there that happens. And once you get somebody to just completely let go from that standpoint and like what are you holding back, what are you afraid, and you just get that out of them, it's everything changes. It's not easy to do. You have to, it's a demanding environment. It becomes very demanding. It becomes very uncomfortable. I've had people cry. I've had people leave when situations like that. You make people feel uncomfortable. It's scary, right? That's what it is. It's naturally scary. But I think you have to expose people. What don't you want to do? What are you avoiding? What are you avoiding that you don't even know that you're avoiding? And then you go into those things. It's not easy. It's not something that people want to do, but that's what training is. And yeah.
that's a very, very interesting point that you just made because I was just finishing up Rob Gray's new book. I can't remember how to move optimally. I hope,
Yeah, yeah.
and I respect Rob so much. So Rob, if I got that wrong, I apologize. But he talks about stress being task specific, and I think that's he put it so beautifully because stress could be or even pain, right? Like you're talking about this is so interesting because there has to be an element of not just physical stress, but there has to be an element of like emotional or even social stress. And
Yes.
what does that mean? A lot of the times when you talk about fear and what are you afraid of, a lot of the times, losing a game is like, okay, I mean, I lost a game, I lost a drill, whatever. But it's more about the consequence of like social inadequacies and embarrassment. That's what we're actually afraid of. And one of the things that I've been working with Ross is if you lose a drill, how do I how do I instill an element of social stress? So, and I'm very careful of this because you just said you had people walk out, people can't handle it, people leave. But at the same time, I feel like in order to adequately prepare them for what is to come in a game, there has to be an element of emotional and social stress.
Yes. I
So,
go ahead.
no, so like to your point of screaming so loud that someone can outside can hear you, it's somewhat awkward, somewhat embarrassing, but it's going to be similar when there's a lot of people watching you during a game and you're away at whatever high school that you're playing at and everybody's booing you and you're at the free throw line. It's similar, right?
Yeah, players wanna play in flow. They talk about it all the time. We look at what people type into the social media stuff all the time. They wanna learn about flow, and people talk about they wanna be in flow all the time. Of course you do, right? But what are you willing to do to get into flow? Flow meaning you're completely just not everything, but there's a disconnect of what's happening in your body, your mind, and then just you doing whatever you're doing, the action that you're taking. And people want that, but it's like, what are you willing to do to get that? And you have to, if you can't, in that example, if you can't yell, if you're not yelling loud enough, it means that you're holding back. If you can yell loud enough, that means that you're completely not letting back. Most people don't know how that feels, especially at a young age. Um, but yeah, it's definitely context dependent. There's people that try to take little bits out of things, and for example, they'll watch Kyrie dribble the ball and they'll try to teach a lot of trainers will try to teach players how to dribble the ball based on how he looks in a moment. But it's like, okay, great, we can do that. How did he get there though? How did he get in this
Mm,
position? Right? What's going through top down? What's happening? Like there's information coming in, going up, back down. Like there's so many things happening. There's emotional tie-in with all of that, all the perception. Like it's not just Kyrie how he's moving. It's what is how is he getting there, right? How is he doing it? And you don't always have to tie in the perception part of it, but it's like there has to be a hint of humility of like you don't know everything. There's just because somebody's doing something and your player's doing something in training, can they do it in a game? Why aren't they doing it in a game? There's probably a lack of like what are the other qualities that they're missing around it? There's the emotional qualities, there's the physical components, there's the movement components, there's the skill, perception, all of it, concepts, game concepts. Like how like that thought of like putting yourself in certain situations in a game, there's so many different variables that comes into actually executing things in games like you're talking about. So it's like we can't you can pull things out. You can 100% pull things out of that, like whatever. But if you're not building the other things around it, it's not going to happen in the game because the game is demanding of a certain thing. I told a player yesterday, I said, if you had to go fight a dragon and you had to go fight a dragon and you never knew what a dragon looked like and you never trained against a dragon and then you're just training by yourself, what's going to happen when you go see the dragon? You're going to be like, wow, I'm facing something that breathes fire. It's going to eat me, that can fly, that's 50 times bigger than me, right? And it's a ridiculous example, but it's the same exact thing. It's like if you don't train against a thing that like with the same variables that you're trying to go against, how can you expect to execute? You're not going to execute, you know? The dragon was good in the time. That's a funny one. I'm going to try to use that more. I like dragons.
no, that's it's a very good point, and it's no, it makes me think a lot, and it's interesting. That's I think just hearing you, or at least the group of people that you work with, wanting to know more about flow. I think you guys are like they're headed down the right direction. It's not like, can you teach me six dribble combo that's gonna immediately get my crossover better in the game?
Yeah.
It's but it's these interesting things. It's good to hear that it's slowly going down that direction.
Yeah, and there's a truth component to it because there's if somebody asks questions that we don't think are good questions, we'll tell them like that's a stupid question. Like go away.
Okay,
Move away. And it's like there's it's all out of love and it's all intent and it's all context. They know where we're coming from. Like there's an intent like we're not it's not a malicious intent. It's like you're
right.
stupid, go away. Like like and they laugh and it's funny. It's like and they understand like okay, like I'm thinking about this wrong. Like I have to approach this differently because good players, we want them to be good, and good players don't ask that. Good players are asking things that are completely unrelated to that. They don't really ask too many questions at all. The best players that come into the gym, they're not asking much at all. They go play, and it's like we kind of have to figure out what's the things that they're having trouble with, and kind of make a different environment, a different situation for them. But like good players, they definitely don't ask dumb questions. I don't
Mm,
hear it. Like the best players don't ask silly little questions. Like they're
right.
very sure of themselves. They go and they make mistakes and then they adjust. The best players adjust. I was playing one on one yesterday against college basketball players, and it's like I get a stop. I'm expecting something different. I'm expecting an adjustment. Like they're adjusting on the fly automatically. There's a level of self-awareness. There's a level of awareness of what's happening around them that they're making self-adjustments. They're making self whatever. But you play against somebody that's not that good yet, they're not doing that. Like I'm expecting the same thing every time. They're going to keep making the same mistakes. And that's when I have to say, look, you just made the same mistake 10 times. What are you not paying attention to? Why aren't you focused at all? Like what are the things that you're missing here?
No, absolutely. And adjustment and adaptability, that word is so important to me, is true skill. It's not really like when I grew up, and we were talking about this off air, I'm 10 years older than you. It was repetition is the mother of all skill. And now I'm looking at things that existed far before I was born in the Soviet Union, and it's repetition without repetition, right? It's being able to adapt to your environments, be able to adapt to your task, and then still have the similar outcome.
I,
Um, yeah, go ahead.
and what I'll say about that is like whenever people want to do something, I always look about especially like whenever players want to do something, they want to stretch, they want to foam roll, they want to go shoot their shots. It's like instead of like I don't completely disregard anything. I'm like, why do they want to do it? There's some players that want to do it because it's I think they want to just say that they worked hard and it's something that they can easily do, easily measure. They say, I'll put this much of work in and I'll get this result. Players want that definitiveness, right? They want to say, I put 500 shots in, I become good shooter. They want that math to
Mm,
math, and it just doesn't math.
no, it
But then
doesn't.
there's some people that go get shots up, including me. If I go get shots up, I don't do reps. But if I set a timer and just go shoot, like I'm the intent behind it has nothing to do with achieving a certain task, achieving a certain number and expecting a certain result. It's me going out there and just having, which is completely different. And I don't talk about this a lot, but having like a holistic approach to how I feel, right? So instead of an external stimulus, like I'm paying attention what's internally happening, not at joints, not at like holding
Mm,
my file, not at elbow and nothing like that. Like how smooth am I? Like connecting to what I'm doing, almost a meditative process. I don't talk about this. I don't think anybody really talks about this a lot. This is something in my experience I do tell players to go do it if they feel like there's something wrong with their shot. Don't think. In these moments, I'm not thinking, I'm not trying to make a certain thing happen. I'm not trying to go for a certain outcome. It's actually the opposite. I'm completely focusing on the process. How do I feel? I'm not worried about making or missing shots. I just want to feel good. I want to feel smooth. I want to connect to what I'm doing, really connect to each like, all right, you know what? That felt good. And I'm saying it felt good before the shot went in. All right, that felt good. All right, that didn't feel so good. Why didn't that feel good? And I'm just like super locked into what's happening. Players miss that. That's like a self-awareness that players miss. So I'm getting up reps, not for the check the box of, oh, I deserve to play well and I'm really good at just putting in the work, so I'm just going to keep trying to hold that to a standard. No, I'm getting up reps because I know that there's something happening with a connection. I'm connecting back to what I'm doing and I'm very self-aware of what's going on in my body, which I think is in I at this moment I think it's an important piece, and it's a different piece than the external focus of attention, like a holistic focus of attention.
See, this is very, very interesting because you talked about time, which is quantifiable. So in a sense, you are able to check the box on that. But then you talk about having an internal focus, which at least when it comes to my style of coaching, I rarely, again, you're not talking about this joint is like this joint is like this, elbows in, like it's not about that. It's more about a feel. Talk more about that because that is not quantifiable.
No,
And it's I just wrote that down and I'm going to take it from you and I'm going to call it 5 minutes of flow shooting.
yes.
And talk to me more about that. That's very, very interesting.
So, So the timer that I'm setting is mainly for the purpose of like I got shit to do. Like I gotta
Yep.
set a timer, you know? But if I don't, I won't set a timer. And almost like if you're meditating, right? If you're meditating, like I'm closing my eyes, like, all right, like there's a point sometimes where it's like, oh, I could just sit here all day. I have no problems. I need a timer. Like at least like I have to put an hour just in case I go over time. So but then from what I'm doing, the holistic focus. So holistic focus is like an actual it's an actual term that's used as far as like a focus of attention. So that you have external focus, internal focus. There's a lot of people that like the external focus group is like, don't have an internal focus. Like don't think about joints, don't because then you're not going to be subconscious with your motion. There's going to be hitches in whatever you're doing because there's not a subcortical timing. You have to be efficient with what you're doing by having an external focus of attention, 100%. But then it's not external, not internal, but holistic is when you use a general cue to achieve whatever you want. So it's like smooth would be an example, or like shoot the ball as high as you not shoot the ball as high as you can. Smooth, like feel good, feel whatever, and that's like holistic. It's like it's not about the outcome, but
It's
it's
a
also not
feeling words, kinesthetic almost.
yes, exactly. And the term is holistic. And yeah, I think what was the original question? I just want to preface it.
No, I mean, this is pretty much, I mean, I everybody, I mean, not everybody, but I'm well aware of internal focus, external focus, but this is a little bit different in terms of like
Yeah.
you're trying to connect mind and body in a
So
sense.
I think what happens is in anything that you're doing, there has to be a balance of you want an outcome to happen. You're trying to make an outcome happen, and then you're also like how you're getting there of like the process of achieving the outcome. And I think the goal of this is to shift it more towards that side. I think we become so outcome driven, and you're focused on how can I get there? How can I do it? How can I do it? And you're just trying to like you're trying to like if this is a square hole, I'm trying to just put this bottle
Yep.
into a square hole and it just doesn't work. So like what's the process of me getting there? And I think there's a combination of both. You see this in the macro, but you also see this in micro moments. Think about Kyrie. Think about the way he dribbles. I think sometimes he does a little bit extra, like that he doesn't need to do. He does a little bit extra flair. He's more on this side of like process, right? It's not like, oh, I have to get the ball and I have and it's analysis paralysis. It's like what feels right in that moment. And I think especially for players in games that are scared of missing, scared of getting taken out, like if your prioritization when you play is feeling good, especially as a learning tool, especially in moments where you're usually afraid to go execute on something you've been doing in training. It's like, look, I want you to be willing to get taken out, be willing to miss shots, be willing to do all these things. And I want your sole focus, your sole priority is to feel good about you shooting. I want you to have a dopamine hit from you literally just shooting shots like, wow, that felt like, and this is a real thing. This is something that happens. And when you do that, a lot of times, because everybody's so outcome driven, it makes you better at achieving the outcome, right? Because you're not so overthinking. You're not so like, oh, what am I doing wrong? What am I? It's just like what feels right. Like do what feels right. And I don't think people do that enough. I don't think people tell other people to do that enough. Because everything has to be super objective and everything has to be very direct. Oh, do this because you're going to get this result right now. It's like, no, like what feels good, what feels right. I think that's missing in everything. There has to be process driven. Everybody says trust the process, but people only talk about that in the macro. What about the micro? What about like you just going to shoot a shot? Why can't you trust the process of you shooting? Can you like don't worry, you miss a shot. It's okay. Like did it feel right? Did it feel good? Because there's levels to this that can get you into flow, right? If you can maintain flow while you miss shots, if you could feel good even though you miss every single shot, then you're setting yourself up for success later on in the game for the next game. Like I think there's a lot of moving parts to achieving the outcome.
What are you currently looking at? What's got your attention? What are you interested in? What's kind of the I don't want to say the next step, but what's currently got your attention?
I would say it's my brain wants to always get pulled in a bunch of different directions because I'm extremely extremely curious, um, like to a fault where I can just spend all like days upon days of just going like and I can't do that. Like days just like trying to figure things out, like looking at research, looking at whatever. Um, the one thing that I'm really thinking about is objectifying skill, and this is going goes against completely what I just said. It's on the complete other end of the spectrum, but objectifying skill more for the sake of the player having some standard that they can hold on. So it's like instead of 500 reps, making 500 reps, how can we create levels and layers in a genuine way that's like okay, you are getting you can say that you're getting better at the skill or at the physical capabilities that come along with finishing because you can do XYZ. You are getting better at dribbling the ball because we know that you can run from the baseline to half court in 2.5 seconds with the ball in your hand, just speed dribbling, and now you can do it with between behind spin. So now we know that you can keep the ball up with your body better. These ratios are getting better, that like finding a little bit of like a it's not perfect, nothing's perfect that when it comes to objective measures are just a tool, but kind of like trying to discover and find objective ways to quantify skill, which is very
Mm,
difficult because skill is efficiency, and efficiency it's very difficult. Skill comes down to like how much are you able to it's not about max output. It's easier to do it like what's your max squat and improve your max squat. But when it comes to like shooting ability, it's not about what's your how far can you shoot from or how heavy can you throw a ball to the basket. It's how good you are at shooting. And it's very difficult to objectively measure or at least to even get a glimpse of something that's objective. But if we can, and if there's something that I felt comfortable about like relying not relying on, but having as a tool and having for players as a tool. That's something I'm thinking about. Um, but yeah, I think that's a piece of it. That's a piece that I'm thinking about. That has my thought when I'm in training. That has my thought. Like right now, I'm watching like players that I train go, and I'm thinking, all right, what is the next step for this person that I'm intuitively saying? Now, how can I put a number behind it? I'm trying to get there a little bit.
and you'd also have to see, I mean, at least for me, what's going on with them in the game, right? Not just in training, because everything that we do is hopefully a means to an end for them to perform better in the game. And
Exactly.
so
Yes.
right. And so you'd have to be in tune with that in order to quantify what we're
Yes.
doing is working. I think for the most part, whether you're in strength and conditioning, whether you're in skill development, I mean, that's the question everybody wants to know, right?
Yeah.
Like how much of what we're doing actually is showing up.
Yeah. And if there was a number for that, and if that existed, where it's very clear data, then people would be or everybody would be doing that thing. Um, so I don't think it's really possible, but I think like data takes common sense. And there's a lot of people that try to take data and they don't even understand the intricacies of what goes into literature and what goes into there's like I barely feel comfortable reading a piece of literature. I barely feel comfortable because I know I went through 3 semesters of understanding literature. I had conversations with the dean of our program so many times. We had such a close relationship because he was a motor learning guy, and he was on like a board of like research review, literature review, and I've been exposed to so much, and I understand it's like there's things that can be manipulated like so
Right.
easily if you don't know, and it's just like reading a piece of research as a normal person is very difficult to do. So
Mm.
it's like I understand objective measures can be skewed. Objective measures can be taken completely out of context and things don't matter. So there has to be common sense that goes into anything. Like, does this actually matter? Is this going to be important? Well, of course, this is not going to be important in isolation, but how does this stack when you stack this, and this? When in my brain, it's like, okay, you know what? We're moving in the right direction. And I think it's for that. I think it's just to know, like, trust your training and you're moving in the right direction to some capacity. Um, like I would say if a player can speed dribble with the ball, like 2.5 seconds for a certain distance, and then they were able to then they were going low throughs, which is essentially running and dribbling between your legs with the ball every single step. And you did that for it took you 4 seconds. And over the course of a couple months, you got that down to 3 seconds. I would say, like, your handling got better, like, to some extent. How much is it gonna transfer to a game? How important is it? I don't know, but your ability to keep the ball up with your body, which I think is a very important skill to have, because essentially we're out here. If you don't have a ball in your hands and you didn't have to dribble, you would just try to run to a spot. And the only thing that's really happening is the ball slowing you down. So how can you keep the ball up with your body as you move, as you perceive, as you react? So that physical component of it, I think, like this, it's hard. It's hard to say what actually matters. Does squatting heavy matter? There's NBA players that don't squat, but I think squatting can 100% help you. Lifting can 100% help you, right? So it's difficult because I don't think that there's one path to get anywhere. But as long as you're making progress, and I think objectifying your progress is good, and I think not overly valuing that objective measure is also good. There has to be a happy medium, but having something in place from a skill standpoint to kind of say, like, all right, like, we're measuring these things. Like, we measure broad jump, we measure triple jump, we measure vertical jump, approach jump, we measure like so many different things. And we're not hanging our hat on anything, I don't think, but it's good to see, like, all right, there's something that we're measuring, that we're moving in the right direction, just as like a, okay, like there's something good happening, some type of accountability that's happening here.
So if I was just to use again, I say everything's a means to an end, and my measurement is what's happening in the game.
Yeah.
One of the best ways that, and I don't know how to quantify this as well, except for playing, is how can we measure anticipation? That's what, and the reason I'm saying that is because if I can anticipate something happening before it's already happened, then by default I'm just going to be faster than you.
Yes.
And if I can, Johan Cruyff from Barcelona, who was the manager of Barcelona, said that if I can anticipate a run that's going to be happening before it's kicked to the wing, and I'm the wing player, but you're faster than me, but I know where they're putting the ball and when they're going to be kicking it, then I'm going to be faster than you every single time. And
Yes.
and we both know people who may be slightly less skilled than other people, but their ability to anticipate and make the right decision at the right time, to me, seems to be usually king
Yeah.
when it comes down to all of this. And for me, it's very, very hard to quantify how they've gotten better. And I'm still trying to find out other ways that skill can kind of catch up. It's obviously, it goes without saying, it's very, very important. But to me, the answers have always kind of been small sided games and playing basketball, and how we manipulate these games through task constraints and
Yeah.
environmental constraints, right? And when you're talking about skill, the thing that I think that you guys probably do better than anybody, is everything is a race. Everything is competitive. Everything has task constraints. And to me, that develops anticipation, develops decision making, it develops adaptability,
Yeah.
right? Every single rep. But does there have to be a number, or can we have a number that goes, okay, this summer Ross got 10% better in his
Yeah.
anticipation? I'm not sure if we'll ever come to that. But in terms of that hard skill, I would love for you to keep me updated on that, on what you find.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like, I think it can, the fact that it can have a number, I think, is the reason why it's probably not that important. Not that it's not important, but the reason why it's not like the king important thing. Because I know that if I get a number, that doesn't mean that somebody's gonna go out there and go play crazy and be really good at basketball. No. I think, and like I said in the beginning, it's like, I think that those numbers would be more for accountability purposes of the player, of like, are you training hard? Not to say that this is the only important part of your training, but we measure things in the weight room. Is it important to measure? Is it good to know that you had a 300-pound squat and now you can play better, and you had a 200-pound squat? It's like, no, not for that purpose, but it's like accountability. Like, are you training the way you're supposed to be training? Like, are you like that portion of it, the discipline portion of it, kind of putting that in check with objectivity, I think is something that people of all all realms do, and it's not for the I don't think it's the purpose of like ratioing or quantifying like how good you are in this thing, but it's like just that like are you putting in work? Like let me see if you're putting in work. Let's do this. And it's not the thing that's going to make you better, you getting that number higher and higher. It's not the thing that we're chasing. We're chasing you to actually be good at basketball. Well, basketball, but I think it's just good for that purpose. And something that I've been talking about is like, I would like, you have to do the thing, right? You do the thing, that's the most important thing. You do the thing that you wanna get better at, and you do that as often as possible. Everything else is kind of just building the foundation. What should you do to build the foundation? You don't have to think about specificity of the sport, you have to think about specificity of adaptation, or you don't even have to do that. You have to do challenging things around the thing that you wanna get better at. I would honestly I'd rather have a grandmaster at chess everything's the same with two people. One's a grandmaster chess player, another is not. And now I'm going to take them and train. I would rather have the grandmaster chess, but like they have there's something that they've developed. Like there's something challenging that they've developed, some skill that they've developed that's improving their capacity in some regard with their focus, with something that's improving them. I would rather have a power lifter that's been training for 2 years than somebody that's everything else is the same. That's not a power lifter. I'd rather take that person. They develop something physically
Hmm.
different than the grandmaster chess player. And it's what's better to be a grandmaster chess player or a professional power lifter and then start training for basketball. I think it's like what you're saying. It's like those objective measurements. You can't say how is it going to transfer to the game. You have to be doing the thing. But all I think about outside of doing the thing is like, is this challenging? Are you going to the edge of your ability? Because there's things that I do that aren't small sided games. For example, squatting. Like that's not a small sided game. That's a capacity. They're building a certain capacity. Doing like a 360 layup. If that's very difficult for you, you're building a certain capacity. Now, you actually just because you could do a 360 layup and you couldn't before, does that mean you're going to be a better finisher in the game? No. But if you do a 360 layup and you were able to do that and you've been training small sided games, finishing drills, you've been playing 3-on-3 a lot, like now I think there's a transfer. Now I think something happens. Like as long as there's challenge in the system, something good happens as long as you're doing the thing along with it. Same thing with vertical jump, right? It's like if you never trained vertical jump before and you just go lift heavy, are you going to get a higher vert? No, probably not. You're probably not going to get a higher vert, right? Or at least for most people, you're not, unless you're like super young. You could just look at weights and good things happen. But if you're somebody that has lifted and you've built that foundation, even though that wasn't a direct result of you building that foundation and then you go train vertical jump, that's going to be better than you not building that foundation.
Hmm.
You know, like there was you became a better human. There's something about you that's changed because of that challenge. You're a better human in some regard, and then you go train your vertical jump. I would take that person any day of the week. Two people, one they're the same exact person. They're both about to train their vertical jump for 4 to 6 weeks. They're doing the same exact program. One of them did nothing, like has nothing. The other person is a professional power lifter. And my life was dependent on who's going to make a higher gain on their vertical jump or who is going to have a higher max vert, right? I'm taking the power lifter. If it was my life, I'm taking the power lifter. I have to take the power lifter. He's done more. This person has done more than this person as far as building the foundation of challenge within them. They've done more hard shit. So I'm taking them. Like I don't have to even think how is this affecting their movement? How is this like stiffness quality? Like I don't even have to think about anything. I just know this person's done more. They're going to have a higher vert, you know. So, and I think you could take that to so many different degrees. So, who's to say that like I like making your bed every morning is hard? I like there's I'm very humble, is what I'm saying. I'm very humble to understand. I don't understand everything. I know that you should be doing the thing, and then you should be doing hard things. You should challenge
Hmm.
yourself to the edge of your capability. That's where my brain is at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, Ross, I don't want to take up too much more of your time because I know you're busy and it's the morning over there.
Yeah.
But I would like my listeners to start following you. You have one of the best pages out there, super creative, super progressive. Where can more people find out more information about you and maybe even contact you?
Yeah, they could just Instagram is good. Just coach underscore Ross underscore DPT is good. You could DM me. I answer. I try to answer everybody. and, yeah, and just leave some comments. I like answering comments. That's it. This was good. This was good.
Awesome. Ross, hold the line. I really appreciate you being on. This was awesome. I feel like I could talk to you for 2 more hours, but thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate you, Ross.
Yes, no doubt, Will. This was good.